minute sort of target there. So good afternoon and welcome to what this is now the 5th session of the Industry Insight series, where we will be focused on legal services, a sector really that has been seen huge exciting growth in recent years and offers students across all disciplines with a breadth of career pathways. My name is Carl Webb, part of your careers, employability and skills team, and today I am delighted to be joined by a panel of sector experts, themselves from a variety of backgrounds, who have taken a pathway into this thriving sector. The session offers a valuable insight into legal services, fueling ideas for your future, and we encourage you to be as participative and ask as many questions as possible. So just a couple of simple housekeeping rules for the session. The session will be recorded. Please be muted during the session unless you're asking a question. Cameras are best off during the presentation parts of the session, but you're more than welcome to turn these on when you're asking a question. In fact, we'd very much encourage that. This is a relaxed session, but you may want to blur your background and make sure you have minimal distractions. Also, please feel free to populate the chat anytime throughout the session, and we'll do our best to answer any questions as they come up. We're really blessed to have a fantastic panel of industry experts joining us for the session this afternoon. They will all have an opportunity to introduce themselves properly, and you will have direct access to them to ask lots of questions. So just to give you a little bit of a sneak preview of who we're meeting this afternoon and who you'll be interacting with, we have Peter Cunningham, who is a graduate of the University of Dundee. Peter is a manager with Herbert Smith Freehills, and when reflecting on his career journey, Peter said that his career didn't start the way he imagined, nor has it ended up where he thought he would, but he has enjoyed every step. So we're looking forward to hearing about Peter's journey in a little while. We have Paul White. Paul is a manager in Baker McKenzie's corporate team in Belfast, where he regularly works on multi-jurisdictional transactions with colleagues and clients across the globe. Paul will also play a key role in legal recruitment, as well as the training and professional development of other team members, so we can get some real great insights from that perspective as well. And last, we have Claire Mccarry, who is a quantity surveying graduate. Claire is now a chartered quantity surveyor and qualified adjudicator, who has acquired over 10 years experience in the commercial management and procurement of construction projects before moving into contract management and dispute resolution. So Claire is also an associate director at Quig Golden, and we're delighted to have her join us here this afternoon. So folks, these are extremely busy people, so I want to extend thanks to all of you for giving up your time this afternoon. And to kick off the session, I am delighted to welcome today's keynote speaker, someone that I think may have a collection of clones because he is literally everywhere. JP is a tech-savvy corporate, despite the trouble getting into our call this morning, and a commercial lawyer with a wide range of connections and interests. JP represents startups, scaling businesses, venture capital and co-founders, and platforms across all kinds of sectors and inventions. His clients are mainly located in London, Bristol, Belfast, and get this, Bermuda. I don't know how you swung that, JP, but I'm sure there's business trips aplenty with clients over that part of the world. Over the past 20 years, JP has been chief legal counsel to a fintech open banking app. He's company secretary to 20 different companies. He's non-executive board director and data protection officer, implementing GDPR solutions. And outside of law, he is a founder of tech forum Origin Circle, a judge on the Ulster University Shark Tank, and is a patron of the Startup World Cup. And somehow he still manages to find time to support the Red Devils at Old Trafford, where his patience has been tested, but loyalty never questioned, we hear, JP, which is all good to hear. Totally. So it's a pleasure to have you along, JP, and I'm just going to let you kick off from here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and kick off. Sorry.
Well, one wee question first, Carl, before we do start. Give me a feel for the students and the people we have on the call, so we can all the speakers and the panel can tailor what we need to say to who's listening.
Absolutely. So just to clarify, the Industry Insight session, JP, was set up and open to students across all disciplines. So the idea is that we've got a number of very thriving industry sectors here in Northern Ireland, some of which, like legal services, may on the outset be open to graduates or students from law degrees, but actually as the world has evolved, we're finding that opportunities exist within the legal sector to graduates from all disciplines. So we do have some clusters of students who have got together in various classroom settings this afternoon. We'll also be sharing the recording to some of the faculties and schools after. So it's a cross-pollination of students from all disciplines today. We have probably seen more of our legal students have been naturally attracted to it, but there's a breadth of students here.
Cool. No, that's great. No, thank you very much, Carl. Yeah, that's magic. That's magic. And hello to Peter, Paul, and Claire as well. Look forward to chatting with you guys later on after I do my wee bit. So I agreed with Carl I'd chat for about 20 minutes on just going through the slides and then maybe open it up. I don't know how, Carl, you want to run a panel session or Q&A, but we'll get to that. But it'll be nice and free-flowing and hopefully informative to different people listening. So yeah, look, I'm JP. I'm a Belfast native. I have lived in England for chunks of my life. I am currently at Keystone Law as a partner, and I'm tied to the London office as a partner, which is one thing I'll come on to talk about, how you can have a job in London, in inverted commas, but you can sit in your house in your attic in Belfast, which is where I am. That's the way I think legal service is changing, and we'll come on to that. So look, here's what I'm going to chat about today. And if Carl, if you don't mind hitting the arrow key as we go through on the wee slides to move us forward, that's magic. So we're going to talk about some facts and figures about the legal sector here in Northern Ireland and across the UK more generally. I'll briefly natter about my career, where I've been, what I've done, some of the lucky breaks I've got. Then, you know, it's important to Carl and I that you get a good sense of the range of legal jobs out there. Gone are the days where when you were a law student, or even not a law student, but you fancied law after your primary degree, you thought all you could be was a solicitor or a barrister. That's exploded. That's a myth now. There's 101 different things you can do with legal disciplines, as we'll chat about. So that's in the third bit. We'll talk about the range of jobs. Then, for interest's sake, I might talk you through Keystone Law, which is a pretty cool new model way of doing legal services itself. It's an ABS, you know, an alternative business structure approved by the Law Society of England and Wales, and that brings advantages too. And I'll tell you a wee bit about the automated platforms that are coming thick and fast, challenge and disrupt legal services. And I'm kind of linked with one of those too, which is interesting to hear about. And then some practical tips that I wish somebody had told me when I was at Queen's. Because I think people kind of try to limit what you can achieve in life, and you don't always get the best information and the best options. So luckily you guys have people like Carl to give you guidance as to tips and the way you go about looking for jobs and opportunities. It's never actually been a better time, I think, to do a law degree and look at what you can do. So cracking on, and I will thank Carl for helping me with some of the facts and figures if we move. Yeah, brilliant. One back, yeah, nearly. One more. Okay, so the legal sector today in Northern Ireland, here we go. One more, you're nearly there. Brilliant, stop. There's 18,000 people employed in professional and legal services. There's been a huge increase even between 2018 and 19 in the amount of jobs. Other friends of mine in the recruitment sector are constantly, I mean, there's not a week goes by when I don't hear about a new firm or an American firm or a European firm looking at Northern Ireland as a place to set up. There's 600 local law firms, over nearly 2,500 solicitors, and 600 barristers and QCs. That's obviously still a valid option to go down and look at the bar as a route. Belfast is constantly coming out in reports, city guides, whether it's Lonely Planet's coolest place to go, or a fintech hub for the future. Belfast, Northern Ireland are still fantastic places. And it has a law tech scene. I mean, some of my clients are local and they have really cool new legal products in litigation and property, trying to improve the conveyancing process, which any of you have done it know is laborious and tedious and takes far too long. So the potential to disrupt traditional law is massive. But yeah, Northern Ireland's a fantastic scene, and we're up there with the likes of San Fran and Singapore and Tel Aviv, which also have good reps. Moving on a little bit more on the facts and figures about the landscape. So we do produce a lot of legal talent. It's and as the colleagues on the panel will discuss later, it's no accident that people like Herbert Smith and Baker McKenzie have come, tapped into the talent here and set up wonderful, wonderful businesses. I remember when I was at Clifford Chance, the big magic circle firm years ago, they made a point of doing what's called the milk round and going around all the universities, but it put the most effort and attention into Belfast and Dublin milk rounds and going to those universities because the graduates were fantastic. It was well known. Eversheds, Linklaters, they all thought the same, and they sent a hell of a delegation over to try and attract Northern Irish talent for their firms. So we're still pumping out a lot of graduates, 600 a year. We do have great law schools here. Both UU and Queen's are knocking it out of the park. I still want them to do better. Personally, I want to see constantly top 20s, top 10s for our universities. I'm very proud of being from here. And I want firms like the ones I've mentioned to keep coming over and trying to tap up our best people. The jurisdiction here obviously is Northern Irish law, but there's quite a lot of people can be, multiply qualified in England and Wales, Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, even beyond that. A couple of friends are New York bar qualified. So don't feel you have to be pigeonholed to a Northern Irish life and a Northern Ireland way of working if you choose to do law here or you choose to try and get a job in the legal sector. There's an infinite number of opportunities, which we will discuss. Next one, Carl. So this is my dartboard of all the runners and riders, or a good lot of them at the minute that I really like the look of, and places and options to give you a sense of the range of jobs you can have. So I don't really like too many boring slides with words. I like to just throw up things and chat about them. So we have a number of people on the call that represent some of the firms there. But some of the lesser known ones I want to chat about, the Government Legal Service here is doing some great work. At the top of the screen, there are paralegal opportunities there. You don't even need a law degree. You can go into the Government Legal Service. There's guys there who were drafting Brexit legislation, working out the trade rules, looking at the future of Northern Ireland, how you get Stormont working. It covers everything from agriculture to fintech now, and that's obviously an option. Public sector law, and I, for part of my career, was in TransLink, which I'll come on to talk about. The public transport provider. So public sector law should not be dismissed as a fantastic place to learn your trade and get a job, whether qualified as a qualified lawyer or paralegal. Other ones you've seen, Fintrue, friend of mine, Darren McCarthy, owns and runs Fintrue, which is improving, processes and efficiencies for banks, major merchant banks. They have a big legal team, fantastic legal team, and they're sitting in Belfast doing top world leading work in the fintech sector. That's Fintrue. City, we all know what they're massive here. They have a big legal team. They famously took their London legal team and planted some of them in Belfast when they first moved over, and the people there have stayed and enjoyed it. I don't know if we'll have anyone representing the bar on the call today, maybe not, but the bar, as I say, needs its place. It's still very important in society. It's very, very interesting, demanding work. I've noticed people trying to maybe getting less attracted by the bar in the last 5 years. I know when I was growing up, it was the number one thing you could do with your degree, your law degree. But I've definitely seen a shifting sands where people like portfolios, they like a range of things to learn, and more than essentially litigation or advisory opinions. But still, really, anyone I know who's a barrister really enjoys it and they find it rewarding. I'm going to mention top right-hand, left-hand corner, Seed Legals. They're a phenomenal business that people thought weren't doing real law. They're automating. It's a platform. You log on with your little startup company. So you can create a company today, any of you, for 13 quid, register it with Seed Legals, and you'll see the clever tech and the coding. So lawyers that code, that's the new phenomenon for me. If you can code and you're a lawyer, the world's your oyster. And Seed Legals loves that. They provide automated documents in the worlds of employment law, confidentiality, fundraising and corporate, what I do a lot of, technology, and they're getting into more and more areas, and they're always looking for talent, whether it's here in Northern Ireland, where they've just hired a country manager, or in London, where they're founded, and Paris, by the way. But see, legal, that's the shape of things to come. People that can automate law, legal documents, processes cleverly, not just sticking a template up there with blanks, but populating the choices, having what's called a wizard to explain to you how many shares do you want to issue in this company? How many directors? Do you want to have an explaining why your choices are influenced by that? It's very clever tech behind Seed Legals, and it's one of many platforms that are out there. And then Keystone Law, I'll probably chat about as a wee example when we get to my wee bit. But and in the middle of that screen, before I move on, citizens' advice, voluntary stuff. Some of the best boards I've been on have been in the voluntary sector and public sector, such as the Children's Commission or the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, where the legal work there is fantastic. But there's something to be said for social enterprise and giving back. And there's no better place. Even when I was at Clifford Chance, this big fancy corporate law firm, they made all of us do 2 months at the Citizens Advice Bureau in London, in Hackney, and listen to real people, real problems. And by God, that put you on your mettle and your abilities as a young lawyer. That's a ridiculously good place to get training. You can easily walk in and ask for experience or help, or try and get experience in that side of things. They're crying out for people to help, with simple debt claims, whether it's somebody who doesn't know how to get rid of their mobile phone bill debt, or they think they've been wrongly charged. I mean, that's obviously contract based, and there's a lot of good work there, either just for experience, to try it out, test it out, or to have a long-term career there. But there's some fantastic stuff going on in the voluntary sector too. It doesn't all have to be corporate glitzy with lights and so on and trips to Bermuda. So I'll probably move on just in the interest of time. I'll rattle through the different things I've seen and done. So started in London, I left Queen's and went to London to Clifford Chance. And I was the wee Belfast boy, dropped into it. But it was great fun. And there was 120 people, I remember, picked. And we all started out together. And for this talk, I just went and checked with head office. There's six of the 120 left. Whatever, 19, 20 years later, or 18 years later. It's a tough gig. That corporate experience as a lawyer, particularly in London or New York firm, is a killer, but it really, really helps you learn so much. And it's true what they say there. There were beds in the offices. There was things like swimming pools for sure and squash courts, but there was beds. I remember getting in one morning on a Monday. I was told there's a transaction. We had to buy a shopping centre for a ridiculous price within 72 hours. And it took 86 hours, and I think I got 4 hours sleep in the middle of the Tuesday night. I went to the floor with the beds on it. And then there was someone with your brand new shirt ready for you in the showers the next day. You didn't go home. So it was the school of hard knocks, but it was good fun. But that was the pure world of corporate law, and tough, but really good, and got me to really fancy and enjoy international work. I'm trying to do cross-border stuff and mergers and fun stuff like that. But I came home, worked in the utility regulator, which is a quasi-independent. It's part of the public sector, but it's got a little bit of independence. Fantastic fun there. I was pretty young in my 20s, and I got lucky and got a head of legal job and learned about energy law and wrote rules for Northern Ireland Water to come into existence, the single electricity market. And probably the most fun thing I did was get to go to Brussels and negotiate directives for the UK. Obviously, I was kind of helping the Northern Ireland side with those energy directives. But that's kind of fun experience. You wouldn't even think of when you're sitting in Queen's, you're doing your degree, you're sitting in University of Ulster, wherever, and you think, what will I do with myself? But you could literally write European law. You just find out what do you want to do, how do you go about it, and get in, talk to people like Carl, and find out how you get these opportunities. But there's some sitting in Belfast, and they're happy. They take placements. They'll take interested people. But the utility regulators doing fantastic legal work. I moved there to become what's called a general counsel, which is kind of like, if any of you's watched The Apprentice, to me, it just feels like being Margaret or Nick on either side of Lord Sugar, that kind of lawyer who helps in a boardroom setting, and that was kind of like the TransLink job. And it was fun, really big company, doing lots of good stuff. Enjoyed it for 7 years. But I got this itch, and then I got this interest and offer from Keystone Law to help them branch out of the UK and help them in Northern Ireland with the office there. And it was an offer I couldn't refuse. So I'll come on to talk about that because it's a very special model in a wee minute. And then I help all other businesses as well. And this is the thing I want to talk about as well, that you can actually have a portfolio life now. You don't have to be one thing. So I'm partner with Keystone Law, but I was general counsel at Seed Legals for 6 months last year, doing 3 or 4 days a week for them. Then there's a cool wee fintech company I help 1 day a week directly, and another law firm I consult with. So it's kind of 4 different jobs, which would have been unheard of in the 1980s and 90s, even 2000s. But it's becoming very, very modern. You do not have to be, you know, a one-trick pony or to stay with one firm, which is really important as well. There's options to have a mixed and varied career. So I think people call it the portfolio effect or the portfolio career, which is something I'm enjoying. You should all look at as well, because there's some people want to hire you for 1 day a week. They don't want 60 hours a week, 5 days. That's the world's changing. Push on there, Carl. The next one we'll get into some detail. So yeah, Keystone Law is a law firm in the traditional sense. It's set up as a traditional law firm in Northern Ireland, regulated by the Law Society of Northern Ireland. But it's also an ABS, an alternative business structure, I think that stands for, in London, where the model there is we're all freelance. So we're all partners and perfectly permitted to be called partners, but we're freelance as well, so we can work or not work as we want. You can do as many hours as you want or as little. Somebody described it to me as being quite close to a barrister's chambers, only for solicitors. You know, so central office will email or ring around, say who needs work or who wants work this week, what type, or you obviously generate it yourself. But Keystone's trying to be different from that traditional law firm model, where you're a trainee, junior, associate, assistant, and partner. They're kind of trying to break away and break some taboos. They're very keen into their marketing. This is an example of some of the marketing they do. So last year they had a marketing campaign where they gave out red roses in Liverpool Street Station in London, and you know it made the national newspapers because people thought, what? But then they read the message that it was a firm saying, look, time to law set free, time to change up your life about being chained to your desk. If you only want to work 10 hours a week, come join Keystone Law and do that. The actual financial model behind Keystone Law is different too. There's a wonderful central office that supplies services, invoicing, back office, client checks, anti-money laundering, billing, marketing brochures for clients. If you want to do a pitch, they do that, which is pretty cool. And then we just do the law of the lawyers. So here's the traditional triangle or the pyramid of how a law firm works typically. Support staff, lots of them, trainees, paralegals, quite a lot, juniors, associates, seniors, and a partner leading the charge. If we flick on, Keystone's kind of flipped that on its head and says, look, we just want mainly lawyers, partners that know their stuff, can do the work with minimal layers. And we find that clients and big companies, they're particularly in their budget, when they're budget conscious, and that's happening a lot after COVID, they don't have the money to spend on a team. So let's say they have a GDPR project or a corporate fundraise or whatever. Sometimes they don't want to hire 6 or 7 people and 3 support staff and 2 juniors, and they just want 1 or 2 people that know their stuff. So Keystone's kind of focused in on that and has hired a lot of people that know their stuff. There are junior lawyers in the office, there are paralegals, and there are support staff, but it's very, very lean. So, you know, I'll give you an example because Carl mentioned the Bermuda stuff. That simply came about from I'm very open to admit this. It's no brilliance on my part. That was central office on a Monday morning saying, we need somebody among you Keystone lawyers to be a company secretary for a week. Do a load of meetings in London, help this company. We've been told there's a lot of egos and personalities on that board. Can you go and be the company secretary? All I did was put up my hand, enjoyed the week, helped them get through their business and their contracts with a wee bit of chat and Northern Irish charm. At the end of the meeting, they said, can you do this quarterly for us? Just be our company secretary 1 week a quarter. I said, no bother. I'll see you in London in September. And they said, no, it's Bermuda in September. Is that okay? So we did that. At the end of Bermuda, they said, oh, the next one's in Dubai. The next one's in Fiji. And it's just, that's a fun gig that came from the Keystone model in a way, because they didn't want to hire a team. They just wanted somebody that knew company law and how to be a company secretary. And that's their need. And they priced for it and put it to Keystone Central Office. And Bob's your uncle, I'm still doing that for them. So that's interesting. That's the way the lean model kind of works. And then kicking on, Carl, I'm going to try and be quick and then allow the chat to take place. So I know that was kind of really fast overview, but I'm hoping to try and land the point that the range of jobs is huge. It's not solicitor and barrister. It's public sector law. It's private sector law. It's new model law like Keystone, and dozens like it that are popping up. They're platforms now, technology and legal platforms like Seed Legals. You should look at the fantastic business, and from being a throwaway company that people thought, oh, automated documents, who needs that? I mean, the Seed Legals are worth many, many tens of millions now in the space of a few years because of their success and their traction with young companies wanting to use their services. So I think the law is going to see massive change in the next number of years. So you need to be nimble, diversify what you know, take as many different modules as you can. And even I remember going back to Clifford Chance, they hired, I think, nearly 40% of that 120 intake was non-lawyers. So don't feel if you're listening, you're a non-lawyer, you can't do any of this. You can. Obviously, you need to convert or do some kind of course if you want to practice. But having non-legal skills is vitally important. There was lots of mathematicians in my law firm, actuaries, different people that then switched. But anyway, so diversify, try different things, try voluntary work, try different types of law, and then settle on what you like. A friend of mine, John Larkin, who was our Attorney General until recently, gave me great advice as a young guy. He said, plough the unploughed field. So when that utility regulator job came up, he said, you've got to jump at that. That's energy law, that's waste, that's things that aren't really done in Northern Ireland or weren't then. So it's a lovely phrase, and he's right. Plough the unploughed field. Look at what's happening in the next 10 years. Whether it's something related to the green agenda and COP26, biotech waste platforms. There's new law out there. I mean, if you love conveyancing, wills, and probate, you go do it. But there's a world of things emerging. Just keep your eye on those emerging trends. Number 3 tip would be feel free to explore and have a portfolio career. Help people 1 day a week, half a day a week, get things on your CV. Because you can then eventually take 3 or 4 jobs and be, as long as you can manage them all, you can have a range of jobs. And you don't have to play for the one team. It's like, so when I'm out at a party and somebody says, what do you do? And says, how can you work for more than one firm? I say, it's like playing for Man United on a Monday, Kidderminster on a Wednesday, and Arsenal on a Saturday. As long as you keep, best attention to everybody, watch your conflicts of interest, that idea of a portfolio career for a lawyer is very possible. 4, look abroad, look at London, look at Scotland, look at Europe, look at America. There are now, I know people in Bristol hiring for a legal job paying 6 figures that they're looking in Belfast, they're looking in Derry. They don't care. They just want someone that can jump online, maybe travel over 1 or 2 days a month to them in Bristol and help them out, but they don't care where they live. And that's amazing. That's an amazing advantage for all you guys, that the world is almost literally your oyster. And then 5, this is from the heart, but anything is possible. You really can do anything, and with a bit of conviction and passion. And do not let anyone tell you it cannot be done. Keystone Law were told it could not be done. Their model wouldn't succeed. They wouldn't make it, both in London and Northern Ireland, but they've both done it. Seed Legals were told it's a flash in the pan. No one wants to buy automated documents, and they're flying. So, yeah, just keep your eye on all those changes and go for it. I've probably hogged this now for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I'm going to shush and maybe let others and Carl jump in. We'll have to get the chat flowing.
Great, JP. Thanks so much for that. There have been a couple of questions just sort of coming in here via email and chat, etc. So one was, you picked up a couple of really good points there. I mean, the portfolio career seems to be one as a model that resonates, I suppose, with the current generation coming through. How do you? One question was, how do you actually kick a portfolio career off? Is it important to sort of get your teeth into something for a couple of years first before you become that portfolio career professional?
That would be your first thought. You need to get good at something. What is it they say in Harvard? You need to do 10,000 or 50,000 hours at something before you can master it. So I wouldn't go that far, but I'd say the opportunities to have a portfolio career are sitting in front of our faces, because there are people there on recruitment notice boards hiring for 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week. By definition, that makes you have a portfolio career, because that mightn't be enough to pay the mortgage. So if you're doing, so I know one guy at Keystone, a colleague of mine, who has a startup, really cool startup. That doesn't pay the bill. So he's doing 3 days a week as a consultant lawyer. Many examples like that. So yes, I would say first part of your career, get good at something, get something established on the CV, but never look an opportunity down, turn one down. And if something doesn't look like it's enough hours or enough, you can make it that. That's another thing. Any job I've gone for and I kind of 70 or 80% liked it, once I got it, I changed it, like I made it. So the TransLink job was like a middle management legal job, but I thought I'll try and persuade the board here. It should be a board level job. And you just go about things and you kind of shape jobs to the way you want them to be sometimes. So I think you're right. Initially, start off, get good credentials in something, but do not turn opportunities down because there'll be 10-hour jobs here, even voluntary stuff. Get involved in your weekend, get other things on that CV that are in and around legal or tech, forensics, that broad brush of experience.
Good advice. On ploughing the unploughed field, I think that's really good advice for sort of for students, but for anyone really, JP, and looking at your career at any stage, ploughing the unploughed field is really good advice. Would there be anything you would do by way of advice, what would you say to students? How do you sort of take that first step? I'm probably putting this in the context of a theme that's come up quite recently in some of our careers, is around the imposter syndrome, where people feel a little bit intimidated to actually put themselves forward for something. So what's the advice? What do you tell people if they're feeling a little bit intimidated or slightly out of place?
That's really funny, because I met a QC, and this is a guy making over £1 million a year. He says he doesn't know what he's doing. He still feels out of his depth, and yet the world and the media think he's a star. Everyone has that. There's something wrong with you if you think you know everything all the time. So a little bit of not knowing, a little bit of inexperience keeps you on your game. It makes you better, makes you focused and concentrated. So I think we all have that, particularly in Northern Ireland. I find 99 out of 100 people I meet from Northern Ireland who have studied here but from elsewhere, they have a humility about them, which is lovely, but you need to push yourself out a wee bit, push yourself into roles. There is also this school of thought that you should go for jobs that are maybe you think you're not quite qualified for, because it's a great test. And I've learned over the years that even if you don't get it, your name is then seen as being in the frame for next time, or people can see you in a different light if you go for a job that somebody would have written you off for the year earlier. So being seen to go for things that push you is important as well. Yeah, but God, there's no real magic bullet. What do you think, Carl? What do you tell people in the same situation?
Well, I think you pretty much nailed it there. I mean, I think it's about sort of having confidence in yourself, and as you said, taking that first step. Once it's sometimes harder to take the step than actually to walk the step. So to actually make that sort of motion forward, as you say, and put yourself in a situation where you're now sort of in the thick of it. Whereas sort of that, it's almost that hesitation to actually just do that is the most difficult thing. But once you're in there, people tend to find that they can find their feet, and if they don't know something, there's no shame in sort of seeking help. There's plenty of opportunities to get there's resources coming out of our ears these days in terms of if we're short of knowledge in an area, we can certainly find it, and
you
we
just
can make it happen.
Something really important, and it's not really legal service related, but it's kind of. And that's the world of boards, and because boards and corporate governance are everywhere. They're wonderful skills to learn, whether you want to be a lawyer or not. That idea of corporate structures and boards, because in Northern Ireland and the UK and in the south of Ireland, there are hundreds upon hundreds, if not thousands, of board appointments. They're all mandated at the minute to go younger. Don't get your crusty 60-year-old fellas on the boards. Go for LGBT, go for students, go for females. They're crying out for people to sit on them. So I think that's another route. And they say, so it's a bit like what you were saying, your first board appointment is very hard to get because you don't have experience, you don't have track record. I went for 5 or 6. The 6th one I got, and then within 3 months, you start getting phone calls. People want you to do others. So it's about that, putting yourself in the mix, getting a bit of luck with something. You can apply it to law or non-law. That's another avenue to build up CVs and make yourself understand legal areas, is being on a board or around a public body. Right. And there's fantastic opportunities. You just have to look up Cabinet Office and you'll see the wonderful range of stuff, and they pay you a wee bit of money one day a month, and there you go, there's your portfolio career as well, because you're doing one day a month on a board learning stuff. It's fantastic, and it's under tapped by anyone under 40. I think we should all really be looking at that more.
great point. And funny enough, I'm doing the Boardroom Apprentice program this year, JP. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it is open to you know, people of any age, and there has been I think I'm going to say a 17 or 18-year-old in the first cohort of the Boardroom Apprentice got through it and added a lot of value to the program. So Boardroom Apprentice is something for students to look out for sure. JP, I'm just gonna tail off there. Thanks very much for your contribution. And listen, I appreciate you. If you do have other things that need to leave us, I completely understand that.
No, hang on. This is good crack. This
awesome.
Is good.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask, I'm going to bring the guys in sort of one by one to give a little bit of an intro and a little bit of, I suppose, a perspective from their shoes. So I'm going to invite Peter Cunningham from Herbert Smith Freehills. First of all, Peter, if you can join us. I think my screen has been closed down. Peter, if you've got any slides to share, feel free to share screen. And if you don't, then let's crack on in a discussion format.
No, so anyway, I have nothing to share slides wise. Just gonna chat to everybody. So I'm assuming everybody can hear me. I will play on until I'm told otherwise. Great, getting thumbs up there, brilliant. So hi guys, my name's Peter, and as was sort of said at the start, I'm one of the managers here in the Herbert Smith office in Belfast. I'm not a Queen's alumni. Sort of graduated from Dundee back in 2007, and I didn't really anticipate becoming a solicitor. It was never really the end goal for myself. I remember when I was doing sort of careers chats in school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I enjoyed John Grisham novels and the TV show Ally McBeal. So I was told, well, give law a whirl. It's a good degree to have if you're not too sure what direction you want to go in. So did law, went off to Dundee, and didn't, even after my time in uni, I still wasn't 100% certain that law was where I wanted to go. But the parents were sort of keen for me to pursue this route. So didn't go to the Institute in Belfast because I wasn't ready to come home yet. So I took myself off to York to do the English equivalent of the Institute, doing the LPC. Unfortunately, 2007, 2008 was sort of the peak of the property crash. So no law firms anywhere were hiring. In fact, I was applying for jobs and was finding out I wasn't getting them by reading newspapers to find out that this law firm's closed or that law firm's downsizing. So came home because I had sort of no real other option, and actually found myself in the Apple store in Victoria Square there for about 8 months. And I was actually chatting. I was selling a lady an iMac, and she was telling me she was a solicitor. And I was just mentioning to her that I was a solicitor, done the LPC, or wasn't a solicitor. I had a law degree, done the LPC, and here I was. And she said, well, we're looking for a paralegal. And long story short, about 2 weeks later, I had myself a new job in Edwards & Co., a small law firm down there in the Cathedral Quarter in Belfast. I was then fortunate, because I had my LPC, I was then fortunate that one of the solicitors, one of the partners actually in the office, was actually English qualified himself. So he was able to register with the SRA, and then he then effectively became my master. And sort of 2 years later, I sort of found myself qualified. So in one sense, I have been sort of fairly fortunate that things, to a certain extent, did sort of fall into my lap, and I acknowledge and accept that. But it's one thing I would sort of say, if people are keen to sort of, if going down the legal qualification route, becoming a solicitor and sort of aiming to become a partner, or that traditional route is the route you want to go, getting training contracts is difficult. It is not something that is easy to achieve. And my sort of main recommendation to anybody that I'm chatting to would be, get yourself into a firm, be it as a paralegal, just to get the experience. And then if they like you, the chances are they probably will want to retain you. Yes, it's great to go in, start as a trainee, and sort of get your career started, but 9 times out of 10, I find people are more successful down that route if they've been in a firm and sort of show their colours. So as I was in Edwards & Co. for a bit, and then sort of I took a redundancy package and found myself then at HSF, where I started off as a solicitor. And I know historically when HSF first arrived into Belfast, and probably a lot of these big firms, coming over from different parts of the world. The main focus at the time probably was doc review, but I was put on to a claims assessment team, doing claims assessment work for a large bank who had got themselves into a bit of trouble. Shock horror, banks getting into trouble, who would have imagined it? Which sort of gave me lots of client exposure, and it gave me sort of a lot, probably more what you would class as probably lawyer type work. You're assessing claims and coming around sort of applying legal principles and coming to recommendations for the client as to how to resolve whatever the issue might have been. Myself on that project, I didn't get a secondment opportunity out of it, but one of the great things sort of with some of these bigger firms that you probably wouldn't get in smaller firms, you don't get to Bermuda, unfortunately, but there are opportunities. Sort of, there's people in the office who have got away to like London, if you speak languages. I think a girl went off to France. People have got off to Australia for bits and pieces. So being in one of these larger firms does give you that scope. Doing that kind of work, I then sort of worked my way up through the ranks within HSF, and sort of probably took the more traditional route within the office, sort of solicitor, senior solicitor, then manager. But there are plenty of other sort of routes that people can take. So we have a lot of people who have come in sort of maybe as a solicitor or even as a legal analyst, sort of our equivalent of a paralegal, who have gone down more the technology side of things. So have decided that they're more interested in the e-discovery and sort of the technology side of the law, and have sort of started their careers and have sort of worked their way up the ranks there. We've people who have gone in and they're more interested in the project management side of things as opposed to actually doing sort of legal work in inverted commas. And there's been people who have then come on to help out on projects and to help just manage the projects. Or we have people who are more probably more pipeline management as opposed to specific project management, where they're sort of looking at things like, well, what work is coming in? What work are we wanting to win? What skills do we need to give the teams to sort of mean that we can win this work? And they're sort of helping with that overarching overview of everything that's going on in the office. And then we've other people who, again, qualified, have headed in the sort of L&D direction. So people who have realized their gifts and their skills and whatever it might be maybe lie elsewhere, and they really enjoy the training aspect of things, and sort of have gotten heavily involved with that. And one of the sort of the things that I enjoy doing is being involved with the L&D and sort of helping sort of anybody who's new to the firm, getting them trained up and getting them ready for whatever work they're needing to do. So historically, if I had stayed in sort of a small firm, my career path probably would have been solicitor and then heading towards partner. But having moved to HSF, sort of the scope and the breadth of the opportunities and the bits and pieces that I've been able to get involved with have sort of grown considerably. One of the things, and I think JP did touch on this, one of the things that I sort of wish that I had sort of spent more time or had sort of clued myself into more when I was a student is the importance, I think, of technology, and particularly computer coding and the way things are going. Like, I would say any trainee or anybody who's looking for a job and is able to read computer code or write in computer code will be invaluable to any team. If you just look at the world around us, the likes of blockchain, cryptocurrency, it's all, there's even smart contracts where technically contracts no longer will be signed or anything. It will all be done through computer code. Things are heading that way. If you look at even like sort of things moving into the cloud, self-driving cars is going to be a massive thing. For example, if a self-driving car is in an accident, who's liable? Is it the driver? Is it the manufacturer of the car? Is it the computer programming? So all this kind of stuff, I would say, in the very near future is going to be very interesting and an area that's probably ripe for explosion, probably in the not too distant future. So I probably would be sort of I'm trying to sort of find time myself to sort of even trying to find, can I do a basic computer programming course or something, just to get my basic understanding of it, because I think the way things are going, that is going to be the main point, the main sort of skill set that a lot of people will need. Obviously, we'll still need sort of people who can sort of take large pieces of information and distill it into sort of the relevant information that clients need. But at the same time, any extra strings you can add to your bow will certainly sort of put you head and shoulders above other people, because I say it is a very competitive market at the moment. Even though there's plenty of opportunities are coming up there, it's still quite competitive. Again, I'm sort of tailcoating off a lot of what JP said. He sort of covered all the bases. COVID has actually, in many senses, has sort of limited the work that we can do, but has actually produced a whole range of new opportunities. So, for example, as you can see, I've been working from home now since March 2020, and I think I'll be working from home a bit longer. But because we've now moved to a working from home model, it has opened opportunities for people to work anywhere. We've people who are currently based in England, who are actually part of our team, and with people out in Joburg who are part of our team. It's just a case of, with a few restrictions, wherever you can plug a laptop in and get a Wi-Fi connection at the moment, it looks like you could really be doing your job from anywhere. So again, location is no longer going to be a limiting factor to anybody, which is great, which I think that's a thing that a lot of people are probably looking for that flexibility to be able to sort of work how they want, as opposed to the way that traditionally the 9 to 5, I would say, before long will no longer exist. I know I only had 10 minutes. I think that's probably in and around my 10 minutes, and I'm not going to repeat everything JP said, so I'll leave that there.
Perfect, that's great. And we'll likely have a couple of questions emerging from the talks coming through here. I'd maybe bring in Paul at this stage as well, with another of the big firms, Baker McKenzie, Paul White. If you can turn on there, Paul, and give us a little bit of an intro. I'm not sure if you've got slides, Paul.
Thanks very much, Carl. Can you hear and see me okay?
Can indeed, yep, perfect.
Perfect. Okay, so thanks for that introduction, Carl. My name is Paul White, and I am one of the managers in Baker's corporate team in Belfast. So I'm also a qualified solicitor. I thought I'd give you a brief overview of my sort of career history and educational history to date, and then we can talk a little bit about Baker's and what we have to offer. And we've actually got some current opportunities as well that I thought I'd flag to you guys that probably are directly applicable to the sort of student body, or well, those of you that are graduating anyway, come June time. So in terms of me, I'm from Belfast. I was brought up in Belfast. I went to school at Methodie across the road from Queen's. I then decided, I suppose, around about 6 years that I wanted to study law. I think at that point, as with many of us, I think it was probably looking to become a criminal barrister. You watch these shows on TV and you fancy yourself at that. And that I probably held that ambition for a couple of years at law school. And then as I got towards second or third year, I sort of realized that the modules that I was interested in, sort of things like company law, are really probably more, you get more exposure to that as a transactional solicitor. So the barrister thing sort of got sidelined a bit, and I still really, to be honest, didn't really know what I wanted to do during final year. So I graduated from my undergraduate degree and then decided to do a postgrad, and that sort of gave me a bit more time after graduating to sort of think about things and what I wanted to do. So I was over in England at this point, and I think there was a lot of pressure certainly for me to sort of go to London, go to the big firms, and that was seen as really the only option. And I then sort of decided that I wanted to come back to Belfast, and I got a training contract offer from NL Goodbody, which is a Dublin-based firm with an office in Belfast that does sort of corporate and commercial stuff. And I still remember being in England and telling people, I'm going back to Belfast to do a training contract, and they look at you as if you've, 3 heads. It wasn't the sort of set thing to do. It was very sort of tailored towards going to be a solicitor in the city. So that was certainly an interesting experience to be telling people that, yeah, you were going back to Belfast, but it's not one that I regret. And I think my sort of thinking on it was that I sort of hemmed and hawed about going to London for a good while, and the plan would always have been to train there for a while, maybe work there for 2 or 3 years post qualification, and then come home anyway. And I sort of thought to myself, I'll end up at somewhere like NL when I'm 3 years qualified. So if I've got a training contract, I may as well just work that through, and you'll end up roughly in the same place. So I trained at NL Goodbody for 2 years. Got around all the sort of departments, all the main departments, corporate, banking, property, litigation. And upon qualification, I had an offer from them, and a recruiter contacted me about bakers. And it was quite interesting because at that time, bakers had only been in the local market for about a year. And the corporate team was about 2 or 3 people. It was very small. So that's what really appealed to me about it. It was getting in on the ground floor. There's a lot of opportunity for career progression. And just I'll touch on our team a bit later, but there's now about 20 of us. So, it's grown exponentially since I joined 5 or 6 years ago. And a bit like Peter said, since then, joining as an NQ, I've sort of worked my way up. From initially joining as a junior lawyer, then being promoted to a lawyer, and then recently taking on management responsibilities. And I mean, my day-to-day in terms of legal work hasn't changed an awful lot over the past few years. So I generally deal with corporate work, so whether that's M&A or corporate reorganizations or capital markets work. Sometimes a little bit of banking and finance work, sometimes a little bit of commercial contracts work, but wouldn't claim to be an expert in any of those things. So that's really been my day-to-day for the past 5 or 6 years. And then more recently, I've taken on management responsibilities. So that includes coming and speaking at events like this. It includes doing interviews for paralegal roles, for qualified lawyer roles, and also just the general sort of pastoral care of people that are my direct reports, performance evaluation and all that sort of good stuff. In terms of bakers then, so obviously Baker's is a global law firm, and that's really our USP to clients, is that we've offices pretty much everywhere. If you have a global transaction that you need to execute, we can do that. We've lawyers in each jurisdiction that you might be involved in, and we can make that happen. You don't have to go to any other law firm, and we can do that in-house. In terms of Belfast was set up in 2015, and as JP mentioned, when he was at Clifford Chance, there's a lot of awareness about the quality of graduates in Northern Ireland, and that was really a big thing about why Bakers decided to set up in Northern Ireland. And obviously, we've now grown to about 400 people, I think. So in the space of 6 years, it's gone from a very small offering to quite a substantial office. I think when I joined at the back end of 2016, it was about 100 people. So it's sort of quadrupled at least in the last 5 years. And we're still growing through a high growth phase, but really it's the quality of the local graduates that allows that to happen, and that's not law graduates. I'm conscious that there are some non-law graduates on the call as well. So we have HR people, we have finance, we have project management, marketing, BD, lots and lots of non-law jobs are happening in Belfast at Bakers, and actually I think the lawyers or legal graduates are in the minority. There's probably at a push 80 to 100 people in legal services, whereas there's obviously 300 being the balance in business services and other things like that. So that's something that I wanted to flag as well, because I'm conscious that there are some non-law people on the call. In terms of opportunities that we currently have, Carl, I wonder if you could maybe circulate those links that I emailed you. There's a couple of jobs that would be directly applicable to those of you who are probably in final year, and they're what we call legal professional roles, and really that's a paralegal role, and it's a great gateway role. It's a gateway to a training contract both within Bakers and outside of Bakers. So we have a Belfast training contract where a London training contract is offered to our Belfast-based paralegals every year. So the odds of getting that are obviously much better than if you apply to the standard London training contract. There might be 10 people in Belfast apply to it, and there'll be 2 or 3 training contracts that are set aside just for the paralegals that work in Belfast. So we've just recently had that process for this year. And actually one of the girls that I work closely with has been given the London training contract. So she'll go and do her LPC in January, and then join the London office as a trainee the following September. So that really is a great gateway role, and also it's a gateway to non-law jobs as well. From our initial batch of legal professionals that we took on way back in 2015, quite a number of them are still working in the firm, but they're not working in a legal capacity anymore. So lots of them have gone on to project management roles. Some have gone into an AML role. Some have gone into management roles. So it's not necessarily that you take one of these roles and you see it through and become a qualified solicitor at the end of it. There's lots of opportunity for a sort of change in career within Bakers. and lots of opportunities for secondments as well. We have regular secondments to clients. Obviously, COVID has stop that in a physical sense, but we still do have virtual secondments both to clients and to other offices. Before COVID, we've certainly had people go to London, we've had people go to Chicago, New York. I think we even had one person go to Sydney at one point. So there's definitely loads of opportunities for international travel once hopefully the COVID situation gets a bit more under control, if that's something that you're interested in. And like I say, it's really a great sort of gateway role, and it's great exposure for you to gain experience. And really, what I would say is our team is quite non-hierarchical. So if you come down to the corporate team as a paralegal, if you demonstrate that you're capable and willing, you'll effectively be treated like a newly qualified solicitor or someone who's 1 year qualified if you can demonstrate that you're capable of operating at that level. And just to give an example, actually we had a graduate from Queen's last year who joined our team very recently, and she's really proven herself to be very capable. And I've just let her run with a transaction across 25 jurisdictions where she's dealing with partners in all the local offices. She's dealing with the client directly, and it's been a lot of hard work. I think very eye-opening for her. But if you can prove that you're happy to get involved with that and you're capable of it, you can certainly get a lot of exposure very, very quickly. And she's been in the door 3 or 4 months, and she can now talk about all the experience she's had with dealing with partners and clients across multiple jurisdictions, and all the things that she's learned from that. So it is a really great role, and anyone who is doing a law degree, I would very much encourage you to think about applying for that if it is something that you're interested in pursuing. For the non-legal people, we also have a graduate program, which if you just Google Baker McKenzie graduate program, you'll find some material on that. And that's a little bit like a training contract, but for business services. So the way it would work is that it would be a 2-year job, and you would rotate around 4 different departments. And that might be the finance department, it might be HR, it might be project management, it might be various departments within business services. And that sort of gives you a broad exposure to the business. And then the idea would be that at the end of the 2 years, much in the same way as you would with a training contract, you would then pick a department that you would like to sort of qualify into, as it were, and then take a permanent role in that job. So just to flag that for those of you who aren't doing a law degree, there are loads of opportunities at Baker's in terms of non-legal roles. But I think that's really all from me. Just like to say, if anyone does have any questions on any of that, very happy for you to add me on LinkedIn or ask a question now. And if you want to discuss offline, that's absolutely fine. Or if you want to ask a question now, very happy to discuss any of that.
Perfect, Paul. That's great. That's fantastic. So, yep, we'll certainly. I'm conscious of time as well, and I haven't brought our final guest in as well. And I'm excited to invite Claire along. Claire Mccarry from Quig Golden. Claire, if I can ask you to switch on the camera there if you can.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon indeed. So Claire, I'm going to let you introduce, and I think it's fantastic to have you along, because unlike our other 3 guests so far, your background isn't in a law degree, and yet you've got a very successful career in the legal services sector. So Claire, without further ado, can I ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and tell your story there as well?
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, so hopefully I just bring a bit of a different perspective on it, whether you're...
Sorry, Claire, I'm sorry. Could you possibly put your camera on, Claire? I don't think it's not switched on there.
I have it on at this end, yeah.
Is it? Can anyone else see? Maybe I'm going to switch mine off, Claire, to see if that makes a difference.
Can you see me there now?
I can't actually. It's still coming up just with your. I did see earlier on, Claire, so it's definitely something working. Flick it on, flick it off.
Yeah, I'll try flick it on and flick it off. Or I can switch it from the webcam to the laptop if need be. I'm actually in the office today, and we are doing some changeovers in the office, so there might be some interference for that reason. So you can, I can see from the chat that you can hear me, but you can't see me.
That's what's happening, Claire. But that's okay. I mean, plow ahead for now, Claire, if you're comfortable with that, and then hopefully at some stage maybe the technology will kick your camera back on for us.
hopefully at some stage. So yeah, hopefully I bring a bit of a different perspective to it. So my background, I started out life as a quantity surveyor, and I started working as a private quantity surveyor. So what that means for any of you that don't know what that is I was drafting bills of quantities for construction projects to a large degree. That's what I was doing, and doing takeoffs of drawings, the drawings that would have been prepared by architects. And then I moved into working as a quantity surveyor and commercial manager for two different construction contractors. One, Lagan Construction, you might be familiar with here in Northern Ireland. And then I moved to working with Lang O'Rourke, a global construction contractor, and I spent 6.5 years working for them in Australia. And it was at that point that I got heavily involved in the management of the construction contracts, whether that be drafting, reviewing them for risk assessment purposes prior to going on to the construction project, or through dispute resolution claims throughout the life of the construction project. And that really then piqued my interest in dispute resolution. So at that point then I started to train as an adjudicator and started work with Craig Golden, and that's when I moved into then studying the law with the aim of becoming a solicitor. So I've sort of gone to study the law as a second degree rather than my first degree. And Craig Golden then, what we do, we're different than maybe some of the Magic Circle law firms and some of the firms that we spoke about here today. We are a small firm, but based across Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland and England. And then our directors are also now partners in Edwards & Co, whom I think Peter started out his career with. So how do we differentiate? I would say rather than calling ourselves solicitors, and we don't practice as solicitors here in Northern Ireland, we describe ourselves as construction contracts consultants. And who do we employ then if that's what we do? We will employ both professionals who have studied in the law and those who have then started out life with construction degrees. So predominantly that would be engineers or quantity surveyors. And why we do that, and then we'll try and get both dual qualified. So if you've started out life as a quantity surveyor, we'll try and move you through the law and do your training contract to become a solicitor. And vice versa, other colleagues of mine who have started out life with law degrees, then they will maybe go at a certain time and do their quantity surveying degree, or they might work with a contractor for a while and then come back with us. Why it's vital is because when we understand the law, that is one thing, but we also have to very much understand our clients' construction issues when they come in to talk to us about their issues, and then we apply the law to those issues. So it's important that you have a core knowledge of the construction methods, the construction technologies that you're speaking to our clients about, so that you understand it, and then you can apply the law and the contracts, the construction contracts that our clients work under, to deal with those issues. And then, of course, we also have our key support roles. So we have our finance teams, our office support, and administration, or paralegals, as the other guys had mentioned as well, and IT, business development, etc. But what we do is very much cradle to grave, specific to construction law. So on any one day of the week, I might be working on a procurement matter. So that might be reviewing contracts or drafting contracts to be prepared and issued to be sent out with tender documents. At another point, I might then be during the construction process giving claims support and advice to our clients who vary from being employers to contractors or subcontractors even. I might also train them on the administration and management of those construction contracts so that they know how to use them, right up to then dispute resolution and our involvement as representatives in that. Mediation, adjudication, arbitration, or litigation, my day or my week can be very, very much varied for that reason. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview about how you can get into the law from a slightly different angle as what we've seen from the earlier speakers. I think JP touched on it actually, and this sort of is crossing into a bit of careers advice. I think it is important, particularly in the area of law. When you're studying law, you will be going through the various modules. So public law, contract law, tort, jurisprudence, whatever it is. Try and understand where your key interest is in those areas, and then try to really get the knowledge around those areas so that you become a bit of a specialist in that area. Would be my advice, and what I have found is very useful to me, because it certainly has made my career progression a lot easier with being able to have that core knowledge in a particular area and then really focus and home in on that particular area. And what I have found that does as well, that then sort of differentiates you from others, where you're able to say that I have this varied CV. I am able to apply my knowledge in a wider or greater context maybe than another candidate. Then that will hold you to good stead in long term, both applying for jobs and also elevating you within businesses. So don't be afraid to do that, and take your time and understand the roles that you're applying for, and really think, do they fit the core area of interest that I am keen to work in long term, and does that play to my strengths? So have a think about it and research the roles that you're applying for to see, do they really fit for you. And the other thing, which one of the previous speakers touched on, which I thought was important as well, know your own value and push yourself. When you are applying for a role, don't be afraid to think, well, that might just be out of my reach. But again, either one, you'll get in and you'll be thrown at the deep end, and you will have to work hard for a long time, but you will then be in a great position. Or if you're unsuccessful in that first stage of interview, then again, your name is noted for the second run around. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions on that, because I know we are quite different in what we do and very specific to construction, but I'm sure there are other firms out there who are a bit niche and specialise in the same way as us in maybe different areas of the law. So it's certainly worth keeping your mind open to that type of career path as well. And I don't know if my video has come on at all now, has it?
It hasn't, Claire, but it didn't take away from the value there for some really good points, and contributions there. And I think I know there's a couple of our schools in the NBE, so on the surveying side and civil engineering side, that were really interested in joining us today. And there was a little bit of a clash in diaries there, so they have asked for the recording of the session. So we may get a little bit of a delayed reaction on some of the questions that'll come through to you, Claire. So hope you don't mind me fielding some of those through as and when they do, but or they may try to reach out to you directly. But it's great. But I think there's some very common threads there, and certainly I'm not sure if I've got Paul still here. Is Peter still on? I'm not sure Peter was. Yep, he's back in.
Yeah, I'm back.
So there's some really common threads, and I think all of your stories sort of resonate with me from a career service perspective, and the fact that the journeys have been a little bit different. Career paths are very rarely linear, but there has been from all of your guys' perspective. I don't think there's any substitute for learning and being open to new opportunities and new experiences, and actually being proactive and actually finding those. So you've all done, you've all taken a slightly different road, but all have very fulfilling careers. In terms of takeaways, and you've been great in sending us some of your advice through. But for students now, if you could kind of give one piece of advice to your student self, as it were, so looking back to those not so many years ago, for some of you, a long way back for you, JP. But what would be the one golden nugget of advice you would give to kind of students at this stage who are, I suppose, exploring or considering their careers ahead? Anyone volunteer first?
I'll jump in first. I suppose the point I made earlier about looking at sort of computer coding, but I think for me, if I was looking back now, was to figure out what I enjoy doing and what I'm good at. and seeing how that can fit into your legal career, as opposed to sort of thinking this is what a lawyer is and this is what a lawyer should be. Because I think historically, yes, there was a very kind of pro forma approach to what a lawyer was. Like, for example, I'm now sitting here in tracksuit bottoms and a t-shirt, which would never have happened 2 years ago. Whereas find out what your skill set is, find out what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. Because I now think that the world is completely opened up, and you will find a way to use your desire to be in the legal field to be able to use your those skills. Like, if you enjoy helping people and like getting down into the dirt with people, so to speak, there's the Citizens Advice Bureau. If you love detail and get into the nitty-gritty of contracts, like obviously there's massive law firms out there, corporate law firms you can go join. Or if you're like anything and everything, whatever your skill set might be, whatever you're good at, figure that out and then say, right, how do I use my law degree and where can I go with this? Because the chances are the opportunities will be there for you.
Good start. Anyone else there want to jump in on that?
I think one of the main themes that I think we see whenever we do sort of interview processes for both qualified and non-qualified jobs is actually a sort of lack of attention to detail. So I think my advice generally would be, make sure your CV and cover letter or whatever it is correct. It's grammatically correct. There's no spelling mistakes, because I think I interviewed 4 people for our last round of legal professional jobs, and all of the CVs had some form of mistake in them. And that's just a really basic thing that you can do to actually set yourself apart from most people, because and it's the same with the qualified lawyer rules. You do see an awful lot of sort of basic errors, and it's something that can be really easily fixed, and it can sort of help you out a lot in an interview process, because you will stand apart, because you will have demonstrated attention to detail by the fact that your CV is correct and doesn't have mistakes in it. And I think another thing that we like to talk about is intellectual curiosity. So it doesn't necessarily matter what that sort of area of passion is, but if you're a student and I'll give you an example. Let's say I had one girl who had come first in her year at the institute for some particular module, and I asked her about it, but she didn't really have much to say on it. Whereas she could have told me all the ins and outs of it and sort of demonstrated a passion for that. That was something that would set you aside. So I think when I say intellectual curiosity, it's just a sort of interest in something, and it doesn't necessarily matter what it is.
That's interesting, really, Paul. Just on that point, if I can stop you, because I think that's a point that I've heard from other employers saying the academic credentials and performance are great, but without the ability to kind of articulate that into passion and sort of give a sense of why and purpose, then that kind of sets you behind as someone who can then may not have got the highest ranked score in the project or the module, but actually they're able to articulate it in such a way that their passion's evident, and I think that's really important for students to be able to do.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that really comes across in interview processes, is the difference between someone who might be a bit on the fence, and a lot of the time if you've got a CV that's really good, let's say you've got a first, that'll probably get you over the line, and we might say, well, didn't interview particularly well, but I'm sure they're very clever, they've got a first, we'll probably give them a crack. Whereas someone who maybe doesn't have as good academics and interviews really well because they demonstrate a bit of passion, and sometimes that can be the difference in getting you over the line. So that's one thing I would say. And yeah, I mean that is a good example of the one that one girl who had come first in the year and something, but when asked about it, and it was a company law module, I think, so I asked her, tell me about it, because it's something that I know about, and she sort of listed off the headings that we looked at various things, and I was like, oh, tell me about that thing. It's like, oh, sorry, I can't remember. And she's like, it doesn't really add up to me. Sure. So I think that's one thing I would stress.
Great.
I might chip in one wee nugget, and it's to always have more than one string to your bow. So whilst the name of the game is obviously to get specialist and qualified and be lucrative at whatever you do, always have more than one string to your bow, because the most unhappiest lawyers I know, and happiness is a really big thing for me now, are those that only did the one thing. And I know guys that on paper are successful, but they're only doing the one contract, whether it's asset finance or property, day in, day out, and they're bored to tears. But others, younger people that have maybe were an energy lawyer to start with and then got into property or corporate or technology, never be scared to diversify and pivot. That's the key word I hear a lot around Queens and different younger friends. He says the ability to pivot, and don't feel you have to learn one trick and know it really well for 40 years. Careers are wide and wonderful. So never have more than one string to your bow. If you get an opportunity in an office with any of the speakers here, put your hand up, ask to do different types of contract, different types of law, and then you keep your value. But that's a lesson too. If you want to be happy, have a variety of legal interests or areas that you enjoy.
Great. Claire, if you're still with us,
yeah.
One final nugget.
I think actually just expanding on what JP said, that is really pertinent point, particularly now. People don't tend to go into one job or one line of work and stay there for their entire working duration, which might be when you guys are maybe 90, you'll be able to retire the way things are going. But to do that, I would say you need to plan ahead. So look, where do I want to be in 5 years' time, and what do I need to get myself there, and how do I then differentiate myself to make sure that I am the best person for that role. So I think, yeah, that's a great point that JP made, and just make sure that you're always thinking ahead of where you want to be.
Fantastic. Listen, I'm very conscious that we're coming close to time, and I know that there's been some really valuable contributions from all of you guys, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share it with our students today. You know, and summing up, I suppose there's been some common themes from all of you, which is great, because otherwise it'd be hard to sum up. But I'm going to really try. I mean, I think you started off, JP, talking about ploughing the unploughed field, which is a really good sort of starting point as a summary, because I think that's been a common thread throughout all of this. About sort of your looking at your career, and actually throughout your career, you should always be looking for ways that you can diversify, ways that you can reinvent yourself in many ways, or sort of learn new skills. I think this, when we look at sort of the 10x economy outline for Northern Ireland, we look at sort of the emphasis on building a culture of continuous learning. I think we really need to do that individually, and I think that starts when you're a student. So don't put yourself in a box. Plan ahead. Follow what you're good at, but also what you want to do and what you're passionate about. And you talked about intellectual curiosity, which is a great phrase, Paul. You touched on a point there, JP, which I think is really important to all of us now, and I know it is to our students, and that's happiness. So happiness it comes in many ways, and it's not necessarily a destination, but certainly there's a lot of conclusive evidence to the fact that if you're involved in things you enjoy doing, then happiness just comes as a byproduct of that. So, find what you enjoy, and, things tend to work out themselves. From that, there's so much opportunity out there is the other thing that we're looking on. Your slide with all of the logos there, JP, of who's in our market. I mean, you would have to pinch yourself if you saw that slide even 10 years ago. There's so much diversity and so much opportunity out there for students. So it is about sort of finding it and going after it. So thank you very much, guys, for your contributions today. I know that this session will be shared, and because it's recorded, it'll be shared amongst our students. If there are questions, I'm probably going to encourage them, if you don't mind, to link up with you on LinkedIn. Obviously channel any questions through myself, but hopefully we'll have you guys back for another session in the not so distant future.
Thank you, Carl. That was great. Well organized.
Thank you, guys. Take care, and all the best.
Good luck, everybody. Lovely to meet you.
Bye bye.
See ya.